This is the EVP Podcast.
Guess what, guys? It's the EVP Podcast with your hosts, Ghosty
and Beaker.
And that's it.
Yep. That's it today.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's episode 99.
99.
So guess what that means? 100's next week. Also, investigation time.
Do it. Buy tickets. Eventbrite.com. Look for EVP Pod. EVP.
EVP Podcast.
EVP Podcast.
Yeah.
Well, who are we? I don't even know.
EVP.pod.
EVP.pod.
But anyways, this week's episode, this is a crazy one. I haven't heard of this one. I might have, but I don't remember it. But this shit was dope.
This is kind of new-ish. There was one of those shock docs that documentaries on Discovery Plus that just came out this last Sunday on February 19th.
And then found out that there was another documentary done by the same guy.
In 2016.
2016.
This guy has been investigating this house for 7 years.
Yeah. I think he probably just did 1 year and then hasn't been back and then did it again for this.
Probably. He claimed he's been looking into it for 7 years.
Yeah. I don't think it was like every day, though.
Probably not.
I think he took 5 years off.
I think he might have. There's a very good chance that he took 5 years off.
But both documentaries, awesome. Really cool. So this is called the Hell House.
Michigan Hell House.
The Michigan Hell House. Or the Hell House in Michigan. Either way.
Yeah.
That thing that just came out got me intrigued. Come to find out that he had done it before. And this other show was a haunting on Dice Street.
Yes. Because it's on the Dice Street.
It's on Dice Street.
In Michigan.
But
what's the name of the city? It's like Milan or something.
Oh, shit. I can't even remember the name
of
the
geez.
city.
You were the one that took the notes.
Well, I don't remember the name of the town. I know it's in Michigan, but there's a city close by. Saginaw?
Oh, we're so prepared.
Saginaw? I can't remember. But it's in Michigan. Michigan's tiny, isn't it?
No?
I know, I'm kidding.
It's very small. It's like Rhode Island.
Right. You can drop a dime and touch everybody. But this
Welcome
house,
to the EVP Podcast, where you get some information and lots of jokes.
But this house was built in 1951, and the original owners were Pomeranians.
Pomeranians. That's what I thought they were saying. At some point, it sounded. I swear to God, they did call them the Pomeranians at one point.
It's all I kept hearing is Pomeranian every time somebody said it. But their last name is Pomeranings.
Pomeranings.
And yeah, that's the only thing I kept hearing, but it was funny.
Merrill, Michigan.
Merrill, huh?
No, I swear to God, like their medium, Cindy, I think she called them the Pomeranians at one point. Like, I don't think she actually said Pomeranings. I think she actually said Pomeranians.
I would have said it. I know I would have said it if I was there.
We're not making fun of their name. It's just it's
very similar.
Very similar to Pomeranian.
And all you want to say is Pomeranian when you start saying
it. But it's Pomeraning.
Pomeranings. So they built this house in 1951. It was Harold and Mabel.
Yes.
That's the parents. They have two sons, Dwayne and Terry. And, I mean, they were pretty much born and raised in this house. And because they lived there for about a good 20-something years. And then all hell started in the year of 1974, the year of our Lord.
Yeah.
But this was just an ongoing occurrence that went on for over a year. Or almost a year.
It started in the summer of 1974 and went to the spring of 1975.
Yeah, so almost a full... It went through 4 seasons.
4 seasons.
Went through 4 seasons, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So almost a full year. But anyways, it all seemed to have kind of started with a broken window one night.
Well, this story, on the documentary, they said this story rivals that of Poltergeist and the Amityville.
After hearing the events, I'd say hell yeah, because there was tons of witnesses.
There were tons of witnesses.
Tons, where you have families with hearsay, and you know what I mean? No one else got to experience it. No one else saw it besides the families. Where they were inviting people in and having shit.
Oh, they had.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna. People, so
this gets juicy.
So they were all going to bed at like midnight one night.
Mm-hmm.
Did it say what day it was?
This yes.
They were.
Shit.
I believe they were
Well,
farmers.
it was July 9th. Yeah, July 9th.
July 9th. They're farmers. They're all going to bed, and then it happened.
Yeah, this window shatters. It shatters into the sink, the kitchen sink. So there's a kitchen window, shatters. All the glass lands in the sink. Dad Harold wakes up, runs around looking for somebody. They call the cops. Nobody's there. And then late one night at midnight, there was started a pounding. So, that's what it was. It was the pounding that shattered the window.
Yeah, I think there was some knocking. The window shattered from like the outside into the house.
Yeah, it was pounding. That was the first time they ever heard this pounding. And it was so hard that it shattered the glass. And now the glass landed in the kitchen sink. And then it ended up happening almost every night since then.
Yep.
And they want to call this eventually the Prowler because it sounds like they were outside knocking on the house.
Yeah, it did. And I think after like the third night, the authorities actually came out and they got to the point where they set up like a 24-hour surveillance on the house.
They were checking out this house because nobody could figure out where this knocking was coming from. But there ends up being just so much more than just this knocking.
Right.
So this knocking just kind of the start of everything, and it's happening on a nightly basis. Knocks,
always in threes.
And
you know
it's
what that
happening.
Means?
It's
demons.
What is it? Oh, damn!
3 knocks means the devil.
So they think that this is all gonna start happening based off of this witch,
the next door neighbor, across the street,
who also built. I don't think they built it, but it was a newer house.
She bought the house. Yeah, it was a newer house. She bought the house about a month before all the activity started happening, and at one point, they just called her the witch in the documentary. They never released her name, but this lady was always dressed in black, wore black lipstick. You know, the typical
some occult symbols.
She had like three iron crosses on her house. Or not crosses, X's. Sorry, 3 iron X's nailed to her house on the outside above the garage. And I guess one day Harold was outside and this lady approached him and said, "I want to buy your house for my friends." And he's like, "Yeah, we're not selling." And then it was shortly after this is when the activity started happening.
Yeah, they think that she probably did some kind of spell or did something because it was soon after that she ends up talking. She ends up talking to Dwayne. So they have 2 sons, Dwayne and Terry.
Dwayne's the younger one, I believe.
No, Dwayne is the older one.
Dwayne's the older one.
Terry's the youngest one.
Yeah, okay.
Dwayne is who this witch is like trying to have conversations with here and there. Ends up luring him into...
Now, keep in mind, he wanted nothing to do with this lady at all.
Yeah, everybody knows she's kind of weird, that she's the witch. And he doesn't remember how, but all of a sudden, he's there in the house with her.
He barely remembers the whole thing. He kind of blacked out. He just remembers being in the house and that she gave him a haircut.
Yes, that he remembers.
That's all he told his family. That's all he could remember.
That
he doesn't remember
there was
why he was there or how he got in there.
There's candles everywhere. He remembers there being candles everywhere. Okay. Her kind of dancing around him, and then her cutting a lock of his hair off.
Yep.
And then he doesn't mention this in the first documentary, but in the second newer one, he mentions how she swallows that lock of hair.
Well, see, and he didn't remember all of this until they were doing this documentary. During the investigation, on the documentary, they actually got permission to go into the witch's house. It was the first time anyone had gone in there to investigate. The reason why they went into her house is they were hoping it would stir up some memories and help him remember more. Because originally, I believe all he told his family was that she gave him a haircut and he blacked out. He didn't remember being there. So all of this other stuff about the dancing, the candles, her eating the hair, all that came up in this documentary when he actually went into the house. So originally it was just, she cut my hair. I don't know why I was there.
And then he said soon after he got home, he had a grand mal seizure.
Yes.
Which he's never had before.
No history of seizures.
And so he
Before
goes to
that.
the hospital.
What is a grand mal seizure?
I can't remember what that means, but
Look
it's
it up,
not a
kids.
good one. No
Yeah,
seizure is a good one. It's a seizure. No, nothing's good with that. But they ended up having the police involved in this because, well, actually, so let me go back. So it was after this ritual that happened. It was almost instantly after that happened is when that knocking started happening on the house, and that's when the glass shattered, and that seemed like that is what let something into the house and go, well, it's a grand mal seizure.
So a grand mal seizure, sorry. It says it's a type of seizure that involves a loss of consciousness and the violent muscle contractions. It's usually caused by epilepsy. And they even diagnosed him at one point with epilepsy. I remember that. And
but that's the one and only.
that was the only time. Originally when it happened, they even gave him a tracheotomy. I remember that. They even showed his scar on his neck from where it happened.
Oh shit.
And initially they said it was brought on by epilepsy, but the actual medical report that came out later said that there was no history or there was no signs of him actually having epilepsy. So they could never figure out what actually caused this seizure to happen.
Yeah. So that's just pretty insane. Really weird. But yeah, soon it was right after that. Then all this shit happens, with that knocking, shattering the glass, and then boom, every night after that, knocking all over the house. But they ended up getting the police. They called the police that night to come and check things out because they think somebody's outside.
Yeah.
Police couldn't find anybody. They couldn't figure it out. There's no footsteps anywhere. There's nothing they could find. So that was the first thing that ever happened. Then let's fast forward to today. Well, I'm going to go back to 2016, the
We're
first
all over the
documentary.
place.
So they're talking to the family. Well, I'm going to go in the order of this whole the things that happened in the documentary, the first one, the
Okay.
2016 one. So they're talking to the new owners of the house that live there today. And the new owners of the house, they're called the Larsons. And they talk about how there's the owners of the house, which are the grandparents, then they have their daughters that live in the house, and then the daughters have kids.
Okay.
And they have little girls as well. So they got 3 generations living in the house. But anyways, the two moms, the daughters, they said that they have seen lights, orbs shooting down the hallway, and that their little kids have also seen the same thing. But that's really all they're experiencing. Besides, there's one time that the daughters had seen, looked like somebody had put their face up to the window with their hands up and looked out the glass.
Okay.
And they had seen that, and that freaked them out. But that's really the extent of that family that lived there today, because there's not a lot happening.
That would probably
to them.
freak anybody out, to be honest with you.
Right.
Thinking that someone's peeping in your house, you're not going to feel comfortable with that.
Right. But so these people, the Larsons who live there now, gave this guy permission to investigate their house for this long. And I mean, he's doing documentaries, he's bringing in the old owners of the house. These people are really cool about it. So they had cameras set up everywhere. They brought in Terry to take a tour of this house, and he hasn't been in there for 40-something years since they moved out. And as he's touring it, he talks about how the kitchen sink would turn on by itself sometimes. And later on, after he's done talking about some of the things, they cut to a scene where there's a camera that they have, infrared, pointed in the kitchen, and sure shit, sink comes on.
That's crazy.
You see it come on, it's one of those things that lifts up, and then the whole faucet head moves.
This was in the 2016 documentary?
Yes, and
I need to
you
watch
will be
this.
happy to know that I did document the times of everything, of all the good stuff.
That's awesome.
So actually, before that faucet turns on, there's a radio that turns on by itself as well. And that's before that. And that's at 7 minutes and 40 seconds. But later, it shows where the faucet turns on by itself, and that's at 10 minutes and 20 seconds. But that's kind of cool how, as he's touring the house, and he mentions that, and one of the evidence things that they catch on video is that exact same thing.
That's
There was a ton of evidence on this one. They have a lot of cool shit I'm going to tell you about.
Judging off of the one that I watched, the recent one that came out this week, I don't get the feeling that this guy, what was his name, Sean? Or is it Steve?
Steve
Shippey.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't get the vibes from him that he's like some of the other shows. I kind of got more of like a Ghost Hunters vibe from him.
Yes.
Where he
Investigates.
looks into stuff, he investigates, he doesn't overreact when there is activity or when something happens. He's not like freaking out going, no way, and like running.
He has real reactions.
Like,
he has real
legitimate
reactions. Because the first one, I wish you would watch this other one. You're going to want to watch it, though. But
I will watch it.
There's times where he's talking and shit happens, and it's all caught on camera.
Well, they caught a lot on the one that I did watch.
Yes, they did catch a lot. Like, this place is active as shit. What's crazy is it's not that active for the family that lives there. But once these started investigating, it's like on.
Well, look at like all these other houses. Amityville, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't really active for the Warrens as much as like the Lutz say that it was active. Conjuring, the Perrin family. You and I have spoken to Andrea, the oldest daughter in that family. And a lot of the owners after them say they don't really have any activity. There's even like when the first Conjuring movie came out, the owners of the Conjuring house at the time, they're like, no, the house isn't haunted, leave us alone. Because the movie comes out and you got all these people that are like, I gotta go find it and check it out.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if with this documentary coming out, if people don't try to start showing up, which don't do that. Don't. It's someone's house.
Right.
Like if it's a public like space, maybe, but
well, after the end of what we saw, there shouldn't be.
Hopefully,
but
you still get it. But
so here's another cool thing. Well, while he's telling a story, so there's times where he's kind of like just in front of the camera inside the house, and he'll be telling stories. And as he's telling a story about a time where Terry had mentioned where a knife had flown across the room and into a wall. As he's telling that story, yeah.
At the cop. So let's tell that story real quick.
So while he's telling that, but this is just him kind of trying to tell that story. And as he's telling that story, something crashed. A vent plate that's kind of up in the ceiling.
Let's do the 1975 stuff, and then talk about the newer stuff.
Okay.
So what he's talking about is that they actually had a cop. They brought in a parapsychologist, I believe. And they were using a Ouija board.
Well, I was going to talk about that because there's there's some other things that was kind of built up before that even happened. No, I got it right here. We can talk about that one. Okay.
Well, this is some context so people understand what you're talking about. Would make sense. I'm just calling me crazy. Okay,
yeah. So there was an officer who was one of the people, because they've called multiple times. So the whole police department is pretty friendly with them. They know them very well. And one of the officers had a friend who dabbled in the occult, I guess he thought he was pretty well versed in the occult. So he thought it would be a good idea.
We all have that one friend.
No, so he thought it would be a good idea to bring him over because they would discuss, they would discuss these things. So he brings him over, brings out the Ouija board, which Harold at first was like, but kind of, yeah, whatever you can do to help.
Now keep in mind, this is like 1974, 1975-ish. It's but I think actually right around the time the Exorcist came out. What was
no, maybe a little before that.
Spirit boards were not really considered a bad thing until the Exorcist came out. We've talked about it before on our Spirit board episode. It was something to do, like it was a family game. People would play it on Saturday night and then go to church the next day. So spirit boards weren't as taboo then as they are now.
So the officer was standing next to his friend, and his friend brought out the Ouija board and started using it. And it wasn't soon
1973, so this was like a year.
Oh, okay. So
this is right about the time. So yeah, they probably would have been like, "Oh, Ouija boards are bad."
Yeah. So Harold knew about what it was, and he was reluctant about it, but he still was like, "Sure, whatever to help." So when his friend started doing this, the officer's friend started doing this, everyone witnessed this knife come out of the knife block and then levitate and then just fly across the room, landing into the wall, but right next to the officer.
Yeah, they were saying it traveled. They probably exaggerated, but they're saying it felt like it was going like 50 miles an hour, just shooting across the room with this cop.
Yeah, to get impaled into the wall.
Yeah, it had to be going pretty darn fast.
Yeah, so that would be pretty damn nuts. That scared everybody.
It would scare the hell out of me.
And there was a ton of witnesses there too.
There was at least the cop, there was Harold, there was the occult friend. I think there was another person. There was at least 4 people in the room. when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so much crazy stuff that happened. Let's cover all the stuff that happened to the family in the 70s.
Okay, so
So I know that there was one point where Mabel was attacked
where she was attacked.
by a pillow.
Oh, yeah, it started going up the wall.
It started climbing the wall and just like flew across the wall and was like smothering her. Like she was pinned to the ground, this pillow, and there was nobody. It was like an invisible force was like smothering her with this pillow. And I believe it took 4 full-grown men to pry this pillow off of her face, is what they said.
Oh shit!
So-
Yeah, I can't remember. I remember seeing that part, but I forgot the story because
It was a couple of like Terry's cousins and his dad, and I think Terry himself. So there was 4 full-grown men
getting this pillow off her face.
prying this pillow off of Mabel's face, and she was just like doing laundry, and all of a sudden this pillow is like trying to smother her in her own house.
That's scary as shit.
Right.
And they stayed in this house. They were living in this house still. I mean, they built this house.
Yeah.
Well, also because of these crazy knockings that was happening, there's this one guy named Fred Clark who came to investigate the house and check all the electrical devices, all the outlets, everything to see if something electrical could be causing this sound. He couldn't find anything. And there's this other guy. His name was Mark. I don't know if he was in this other documentary. When he was a kid, he was about 12 at the time, his father worked with Harold. And they would talk about these theories. He'd talk about the weird stuff going on at the home, and he would talk about these theories. And they went there one night. They went there a few times, I guess. And there was no knocking happening. And I guess Harold got all mad and called it out and was like, raising his fist and screaming at it. And while he was doing it to show itself, they heard a big loud pounding in the kitchen. Boom. And as soon as that happened, it was so strong. The banging was so strong that there was plates that were hanging on the wall. They were bouncing off the wall because of the pounding. And I mean, this guy remembers these stories well. And, he's an old man now. But when that happens, Harold's going like, "See, explain this shit, explain this shit," because he's been talking about it, and so boom, that starts happening, and then soon after that, they start hearing rumbling all over the house, just rumbling noises, and it kind of sounds like, and later they come to find out it's coming from the attic, but so when there was other times where this was happening, where Mark and his father was there as well, and there was one time where they had let a dog out to go after whatever was causing those knockings. And they said the dog ran around and was barking at something and then sounded like it was getting its ass kicked, like it was getting beat by something.
Jesus.
And they go around, there's nothing there. They couldn't find anything. There's no tracks, there's nothing. And so that happened while this guy was there when he was like 12, 13 years old. Let's see. I think that was all this guy really talked about. Yeah, that's kind of most stuff that this guy had talked about. There was another time where they put a police dog outside. Did you hear about this
No.
dog? So this police dog was named Fury. He was a well-known, very good police dog. And they thought they would tie him up outside and let him sleep outside. Because if anyone's hopping the fences and messing with the family, this dog's going to catch him. There was... he was there for a week. This dog was there for a week. And all week, they would get the knockings inside, the poundings inside the house, and they would hear it. Dog never barked once. Didn't hear a thing. And so that was like, okay, well, that failed.
Right. Like I said, I know they put at one point in time 24-hour surveillance on the house for like a week or so, and because they were legit. They thought it was a person. They were trying to catch who was doing all this, and they could never find anybody.
They were doing stakeouts on this house. They would have the house surrounded with cops, and they would have a cop inside the house waiting to hear the knockings. There would be a cop, so the cop would get on the radio and like, "All right, it's here, it's happening. Light them up." There's nobody there. They would be outside the house walking around. They can't hear a thing outside the house. He'd be on the radio telling them it's knocking, it's doing it. They can hear the knocking on the radio, but they can't hear the knocking outside the house. So the only time they're hearing the knocking is while he's on the radio talking about the knocking happening. But they're standing right outside like, I I hear a fucking thing. What are you talking about?
That's insane.
I guess there was fires.
There was a fire.
There's fires that were happening. So this first one, I guess they had a psychologist that was staying with them. That was staying with them at the house.
Yeah, they brought in that parapsychologist. I know the dude was there for quite a while because he had like over 30 hours of audio.
Yeah.
Just doing interviews with the family and trying to capture evidence.
And so he's been at this house for days, or I can't remember how long exactly when this first thing happened, where he's like, he was going to go run somewhere. And Mabel, the mom, she was saying how happy she was. They're all going to go to church that day, whatever. The psychologist was going to run into the store or something to grab something and be right back. While he was gone, there's a fire at the house. It happens to be a fire right before they go to church. So I guess Mabel was just waiting for Dwayne to finish doing his hair so they could go to church. And while they're doing that, the toilet paper that's on the roll bursts into flame randomly. And this ends up getting documented as the first and only fire that was pretty much deemed paranormal.
Yeah, was there more than one fire, or was there
was like
fires?
3.
Okay. So I know they originally thought Dwayne was doing this. I know they thought Terry was a suspect as well, but their main focus was Dwayne. I think they took him in, or they took him downtown, whatever you want to call it, and interviewed them. But I think after the last fire, I believe it was, the fire department came out and they did their investigation, and they actually deemed it
humanly impossible
for this fire.
Yeah, humanly impossible.
It's crazy because like I've never heard of another case of a fire. Like they thought it was arson. I've never heard anyone ever saying, this fire was paranormal. This fire was not humanly possible. I've never heard a fire department rule that before.
No, that's why it's in the history books for that.
That's crazy.
Because the fire chief came out there, inspected this. He was able to take the roll thing that the toilet paper was on, and inspect it for like an accelerant or any. The thing that makes it humanly impossible is that the way that toilet paper was rolled up so tight, it can't catch fire so very easily. It needs oxygen in order to burn like that. So he's just like, this doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. That's not how it works. It's not how any of this works.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, it ended up more spontaneous fires ended up happening as well. And I can't remember the other two. I didn't, because I was going to rewatch that other one, but I ended up taking so many notes on that first one.
That's the only one they really talked about in the documentary.
Yeah, because it seemed like that was just the most significant one that they were able to get that deemed impossible. So anyways, when this guy was investigating the house, this new guy, Steve, whatever, while they were kind of talking more about that first family and the things that they had seen, being that face looking out the window, they ended up catching something on camera. And they ended up catching a lot of these things. There were a ton of things standing and creeping around corners, looking at shit and creeping back around. A ton of it.
Well, they got some good EVPs on the one that I watched as well.
Yes.
And they brought in Cindy, their medium.
So yeah, I liked how they did bring in Cindy.
Right off the bat.
So while he was investigating, he ends up getting called on the radio going, hey, is there anyone in the house with you? And, asking him, he's like, no, I'm the only one in. And they tell him about seeing some figure in that same window, and then they had a camera aimed at that, and they checked that camera footage, and there was a light anomaly. There was something that looks like it stands in front of that window and then kind of turns away from it. I mean, when I kept rewatching it, I could almost see the outline of their face and shoulders and everything, like looking out the window and then just turning sideways and then kind of looking down. I was like, holy shit. But there was a lot of that. So I got the where the radio turns on, where the faucet turns on. Then there's another time at 15 minutes where there's a camera sitting there and you just hear the creaking and this door just randomly opens. Just random as shit. Nobody's in there. There's just cameras just sitting there, and then you just hear the creaking of it and everything just slowly opening. And then there was that time where he's telling about the story of the knife, and then that vent crashes. And then there's that anomaly in the window. And then there's a spirit orb. I'm not a fan of orbs, right?
No, neither
So
am I.
this orb comes out of the freezer after like you see the freezer kind of there's a camera in the kitchen, and it's just aimed at everything, and the freezer door opens and closes, and it's one of those tall doors. It opens and closes, and then right after it does that, this orb shoots out of the freezer and around the corner. It's pretty nuts.
That's crazy.
And then there's times where you see the spirits where they show other cameras just kind of positioned, just sitting there infrared, and you see where spirits poke their heads around corners. They go creeping around the corners and then going back in. And then sometimes you're seeing the front part of it, and sometimes you're seeing the back part of them doing it. It's pretty awesome. So I got that all time too. I got that all listed.
That's crazy.
And then there's a camera in the bathroom, one of the bathrooms. Randomly, one of the bulbs, they have the screw-on bulbs above the sink. Randomly, and I don't know how many hours that's been sitting there. It's night. Just a bulb comes out, crashes down in the sink. No reason.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Yeah, all the time. Everybody gets woken up by crashing.
Yeah, no, light bulbs just unscrew themselves all the time.
And then there's a time where Steve is talking. He's talking about things going on in the house and his investigation, just sitting down to the camera. And while he's doing that, the blinds close behind him. Like and he has a natural reaction. Like his reactions are real. He's startled. Like
was he
anyone
doing an
would be.
investigation or an interview at this point?
Talking to the camera. Like
Okay.
he's sitting down and talking about investigation stuff. Like
Okay, so he's not like actually.
he's not
actively,
walking through the house.
Right, so he's not conducting an actual investigation at this point. It's just kind of.
No, it's still dark, it's still infrared, and he's got a camera in front of him, and he's talking to the camera.
So he's not like egging anything on, and then this stuff happens.
No.
So it's. I mean, what I'm getting at is that you got. We make fun of some of the shows because they egg stuff on. They're asking for shit to happen, and it happens. They freak out. So he's not actively trying to communicate with the spirit at this point, and stuff starts happening.
Right.
I mean, that reaction, like you're saying, I haven't seen it, but it sounds. It
It's
sounds like it's legit reaction. Like he's not expecting it, and
it's one of those things.
happens.
So when those things happen, like you don't scream, you don't run and scream. You kind of turn around, your eyes get all huge, and you're like, "Is that really happening?"
yeah.
And you don't even really make a sound, and you kind of look back at what you were doing, and you're kind of collecting your thoughts. His reactions are genuine. Where when you see people screaming and yelling, "Dad, like that shit has been probably
I only did that
practiced like 3 or 4 times. I mean, because it happens every single time to when these people are investigating things. But not this guy. He's got genuine
I've done
shit.
that once that I could think of in my career
Right,
as an investigator, and I wasn't
Not every
expecting.
time, not every time.
I wasn't expecting something to growl at me through a speaker that wasn't plugged into anything.
Right, but that still wasn't a loud scream or running.
No, it was. It was take it. How do you turn this off?
Yeah, and that wasn't. Yeah,
mean-
that was
I mean-
cool. We were all doing that.
All
Did
of
that
us were
really?
confused. That was on our Silent 49 episode, so you can actually hear my natural reaction to being growled at.
Right. So when this thing happens while this guy's talking, yeah, he's having a real reaction. It's cool. And
It's not staged. It's not something they planned. Mm-hmm. Like I said, watching this one documentary, he doesn't seem like the type of person that would do that.
Right.
I get it. Like for some of these shows, they have to do it for entertainment value. When you're doing a documentary like this, you're not trying to get activity for entertainment value. You're trying to tell the truth.
Right.
for
And
the
he
most
goes
part.
deep diving into this story. I mean, he's getting old retired cops. He's getting all these cops, fire chiefs. He's getting the psychologist. He's talking to all these people. And he stayed in contact and talked to him. It's been pretty cool, all these different interviews he did.
So what? The family itself, like, how the activity stopped for them?
They moved out.
They just straight up moved out. They're like, we're done with this, and we're gone.
They moved out in because pretty much at the end of it in spring of '75. That's when they decided to just move.
Okay.
But
Because you hear about some of the other places where, like, it ended for the Lutz because they fled their house in the middle of the night. The Perrins, we've talked about their story. They were in the house for 10 years while their stuff was going on. So this one, it was a year, and they just were like, we're sick of this, we're gone.
so even after they left, the thing that was brought into the house by that witch stayed there. It didn't bother anybody else because they think it was only after Dwayne.
Well, I think Dwayne has some kind of like psychic abilities.
Well,
Well, it was more open, and which is why this witch was after him, more or less.
Yeah, that he's open, but that he also had a dark presence with him all the time.
They kept saying that they saw a man with him.
Yeah, that there was this man with him always, but that he wasn't good.
No, they actually said they went as far as saying it was possibly a shapeshifter.
Oh, good. Okay. No one really sees much of this. It's more of just what's been hearing.
This is what their medium said in the new documentary.
Oh, there's a couple more things that they found on camera that I have documented. One was there was kitchen papers. There's papers hanging off the side of the fridge magnet to it. There's something that kind of brushed and caused the papers to fly up. And then there was an alarm sitting on the counter, triggered that right after. So you can kind of see the movement of it going from there to the alarm. And then there was a time where they were going to send someone up in the attic in this documentary. And as this is happening, so Steve, he's going to have this guy named Eddie go up this ladder, and he was going to go up into the attic because they said that there was all this rumbling. There would be rumbling in the house, and that's where it would come from. It seemed like it would always come from the attic. So this guy, Eddie, is going up this ladder, and as he gets towards the top, Steve's like, I'll hold the ladder for you, to keep this stable while he goes up. He's talking into the camera while he's holding the ladder. Dude is on the top, falls down. The ladder didn't move from him, like moving it or anything. The dude up top falls down and hits the concrete from the top of the ladder. Jeez. And it's like they're having natural reactions, like, oh shit, oh, you okay? Don't move. And he's like, what happened? And the dude that fell keeps saying, something pushed me. He kept repeating that, something pushed me. And he just barely was going up there, and all of a sudden, bam, came flying down the ladder. The ladder didn't move, so it wasn't him like his feet sliding out. Like he said, he got pushed. And,
Interesting.
And that's something you wouldn't want to stage for yourself, because that's falling from a 6-foot ladder on the concrete. That shit's gonna hurt. Yeah. All he was doing was holding his.
There's no stunt
knee.
doubles in this.
Yeah, this dude was hurt. This dude was really hurt from that.
Or he's really dedicated to the documentary.
Right, he really was going for the show.
Yeah, I don't think it was staged.
No, not at all. That was pretty gnarly. That was pretty nuts. And then in the new documentary with Cindy, where Steve was with Cindy,
so
they end up getting this.
Doesn't tell her anything about this. It's what a lot of teams do when they bring in a medium. They don't give them any information at all.
First thing she does, who's Harry?
Yeah. Who's Harry? And he's like, Harold, that's the father. I give my both of they passed away while they were in their 60s. And
not old. That's not old either.
No, it's not. And they're convinced that had all this stuff not happened to the family, the two sons, Terry and Dwayne, so their parents would probably still be alive today if it wasn't for all this activity.
You're right. Yeah, they think that wore on them a lot. Just that 1 year. But while Cindy was there, she would pick up on stuff, and they had all these devices out, all these different EMF meters, multiple kinds. Every time she would tap in with a spirit and talk about things that really did happen, that you knew happened because you saw people mention it earlier in the documentary where they would have an interview, and then when Cindy comes in and she mentions these things that were already mentioned, all these devices start going off as soon as she starts saying some shit, and it's like, everything's going off.
Well, I think it was crazy because they're walking around. They're doing the outside of the house first, and she stops and she's like, "I could see windows being like blown out."
Yeah.
And
so what's the pounding?
Yeah. So
or the knocking.
So he goes, "Well, that's interesting that you stopped here." And she's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because that window right there where you stopped is where the activity started. That was the first window that blew out."
And then there's not a window there anymore either. I think that where the original window was, I think they kind of boarded that up and made it part, like, so it's not even a window anymore.
Yeah, she stopped right where it happened. They decide to set up and do a mini investigation. They're asking some questions, and they get this EVP, and it's pretty clear. I think this one's a Class A EVP.
Yeah, this was
because like you didn't even need their captionings or them repeating because they said it right after it happened. It sounds like you're all gonna die.
So what was the question they asked? Like, what
I don't remember.
I thought you would remember, damn, because I don't remember either. But it was more to the effect is like, what do you want from this family, or what do you want from
something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like
you're all gonna die.
That was good.
She was picking up on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and every time she would, boom, everything would start going off.
Well, like they were in the house and she's tapping into stuff and she's giving him information. and literally every device. He had like a millimeter with a REM pod.
All going off.
He had his little coffin like music box thing. Just like everything was going off. I mean, it was annoying to watch on the documentary because like literally everything's going off.
Right.
She gets to the point to where she's like,
I can't do this.
We need to go outside. I can't think. I'm having a hard time.
I would have just turned everything off. Like,
I would have too. That's literally
what
I thought.
said. That's what I was
like,
saying.
why wouldn't you just turn everything off? Like,
turn it all off. Like, you're already tapped in. We know it's doing it. Just have one.
And then and I thought it was funny because they say, "Oh, we had to go outside because it was trying to scare us out of the house." I'm like, just turn your shit off.
That's exactly what I said. Just turn it off. Leave one on.
Because she wasn't complaining that the house was like too heavy in energy or anything.
It was
like
the noise.
It was the noise, and I'm like,
throw them outside.
It's just like, oh, this radio's too loud. I'm gonna go outside. Just turn it off.
Yeah, because
that was like the only one of the first things I kind of didn't agree with. It was just like, just turn the shit off. And then when they start digging deeper into what caused it, what was going on, this is when they get into the whole witch thing. I know that towards the end of all of this, before they moved out, I know they went to they had their priest came over, a Catholic priest came over, blessed the house. They all went to church together, and this witch was there at the church. And went up to the pastor or the priest and started like sobbing and crying.
Yeah.
And the priest pretty much told her like, you need to leave this family alone. Like, you can't do this anymore. And you need to move, basically. Told her she needed to take off. And it was about a month later that she put the house up for sale and moved out.
I just remember this part about that guy, Mark, that I talked about, his father worked with Harold.
Yeah.
When that first night, after they had witnessed the knocking and everything, he said when they got home, they were home for maybe half an hour that night. It was late. It was like midnight or something. They said, well, he had said that he was maybe 5 feet away from the door, and something knocked on the door 3 times. Boom, boom, boom. And it was a matter of seconds before he had opened it and nothing was there. And he said that happened about five more times happened 3 more times over a 5-day period.
Jesus.
Where
3 knocks, the devil.
But he said it was loud, like 3 loud big knocks, boom, 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 right on the front door. And
sounds
he
like
said
Ginger Squatch was there.
Yeah, but a disappearing Ginger Squatch.
Disappearing Ginger Squatch. Well, have you ever seen one?
Camouflage.
You ever seen a real Squatch?
Sitting next to one.
And they're hiding. They hide. I know their secrets.
Well, at the end of this new documentary, Steve has this witch come in.
Miss Aida,
the Catholic witch.
Yeah, the Catholic witch. When she was doing something, so I was like, what?
She was doing things and then doing Catholic prayers, but yeah.
So some of the neighbors and like family members back in the 70s said when some of this stuff was going on, they saw the neighbor, this witch, outside contorting in weird ways. She brought like people over. They said there was evidence of like the occult there and like satanic worshiping going on, and they would dance and contort their bodies in weird ways, like they were worshiping the sun.
Like their hands were doing.
And as we were watching the last little bit of it before we started recording, you're just like, so they were doing pagan rituals. Got it. Like, yeah, pretty much. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like they were just being pagans.
That's the devil's work.
Yeah, that's pretty much how they treated them.
But I guess, she was outside in like thunderstorms while it's raining like crazy and having like fires and trash cans going on.
Sounds like a good time, actually.
Yeah, right. Like I love being outside in the rain, and why not have a fire? Stay warm while you're in the rain. It's just
and they were saying how with her dancing it would cause the fire to get higher and higher.
I'm sure she had some little powders or something she could throw in there. Because if she was a practicing witch, I'm sure you've got stuff going on. Right. But so this Miss Aida was saying that she was definitely a witch, and she was just going to call this lady the witch because, like I said, they didn't give a name.
Well, this is my thought too. This circle, there's a circle in that yard that doesn't grow.
It's brown still.
Yeah, it's brown, and
they say that's exactly where they saw her always doing her rituals.
Yeah,
and stuff.
That's where her rituals were done, and nothing grows there now. And all I could think about was like, she's probably throwing salt. No, I think she's probably throwing salt everywhere. most
It makes
likely.
sense.
And if you salt ground, shit don't grow.
Well, if you're putting a circle of salt around you for protection while you're doing your spells,
Right.
like, it would make sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first thing that came to my mind as soon as they mentioned the spot.
Well, like we mentioned earlier that she had the 3 iron X's on her house, which is also a repellent for negative energy.
Also porn.
Porn, yeah. Oh, beer as well.
Dos Equis. There's only 2 X's in that.
This is true. Yeah. So they're convinced that this lady had opened a portal on this spot of grass, and that she had summoned some sort of demon that she couldn't control, and things got out of hand. And this demon was going after Dwayne because he's open, as far as like.
Well, that she binded him to her by swallowing his DNA.
She performed like some kind of marital ritual.
Well, this is what this Aida was saying.
This is what Aida is saying.
I mean,
so.
we don't know what.
All of this stuff that they said about the witch is pure speculation.
Yeah, I think she was just a pagan,
evidence.
and I think she was probably maybe a little touched in the head, but
quite possibly.
But she's probably just socially awkward. Maybe, who knows? But,
well, you'd have to be to just go up to someone's house
like,
after
I
a month
buy
of moving in, and I want to buy your house for my friends.
Yeah. Well, also their neighbors aren't like close by either. I think at
Right.
the time, I think they had
They claim that this person had no friends in the area. It's
like
it's
they
all,
don't know.
it's all speculation.
Yeah, because they don't know her, and it sounds like she had people over there.
Yeah, they were dancing and worshiping in the sun.
Yeah, so it sounds like she had friends.
In the summertime, so weird.
Maybe not winter friends. Maybe she doesn't have winter friends. Who knows?
Winter in Michigan, I don't know what it's
But
like.
apparently, at the end of this Miss Aida banished whatever was
She
there.
consulted a demonologist and told her to read this psalm. And so while she's conducting this ritual, they have these red lanterns in a circle around it. Now, when they were, before they even did the ritual, they were like investigating the circle. They had candles around this circle of grass, and they had his little box going, and Cindy was inside the house, like drawing something on a chalkboard.
Right, she was doing some spirit drawings.
She was doing spirit drawings, and the drawing was actually really cool looking.
Yeah.
It had like it started out with a face, but then you see like behind it was like a person.
Mm-hmm.
I know in some of their investigations, like when they were asking spirits questions, she kept saying he didn't do it. She kept hearing that.
Yeah.
And she thought it was referring to Dwayne and the fire. Like there was a spirit saying Dwayne didn't set the fire.
Yeah.
Like trying to clear his name. But when they're investigating the circle, it just keeps saying like it said something like Satan, son of the demon, or something like that. And
son wrong.
Oh, that was on the Echovox.
Oh yeah,
not the Echovox, the Ovulus.
That was on the Ovulus.
It said like Satan, son wrong, or something like that. And over this his spirit box, it just kept saying Cindy's name over and over and over again, and it like freaked him out. So he ran to go check on Cindy, and that's when you see the drawing. So they kind of they talk to Terry and Dwayne a little bit more before they go out and close the portal. And they're using the SLS camera, which is a great device that you should never buy.
This one seemed a little bit more high tech.
Yeah, there's you can get a free app on your phone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of the SLS. But
you have one.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan. But
they said they were seeing like a spirit touching Terry's head or Dwayne's head, and there's a spirit sitting behind him and Cindy. That's not a EVP. That's my stomach.
That was a rumbling from the attic.
that was Ginger Squatch's roar. I don't even know if the microphones picked that up, but
I heard it.
Yeah. So they say that there's always this man behind Dwayne.
Yeah.
And it was the thing that was kind of like egging him on and stuff like that. So they're conducting this ritual. They're reading a psalm out of the Bible, and she's like asking God for help, and did the Catholic cross.
Yeah,
all while they're holding the statue of Saint Michael, because in her words, we all know Saint Michael kicked the devil's ass. And another person, so Cindy was holding the statue of Saint Michael. Steve, or whatever his name is, was holding an iron cross for protection. And she read the psalm, and then she's like, she gets done reading it, she does her little prayer, and she's like, and now I'm going to drive this iron dagger into the ground. I'm like, well, that's not necessary. Just do it.
But she had a. It was for views.
Oh, it was very over dramatic
Yeah,
the
it
way
was
she
for the
pounded that
views.
into the ground.
Oh yeah, and the whole time I like how they kept cutting to the scene where all the EMF meters were beeping like crazy.
Well, no, that was pretty trippy. I don't know.
I don't know. So they don't say if that's happening while she's doing this.
They're implying
They're
that it happened,
implying.
but there's no way to know if that's actually what's happened. But
it made it intense. It made it intense.
It did.
Right?
They had-
you sucker. You got sucked into that.
They had 3 different cameras in 3 different parts of the
It
house.
was flashing. It was her talking, and then it was flashing over to
And
the.
it was like the kitchen, it was the bedroom, and it was.
They were making it
bathroom or
seem like
something,
everything was going
but
crazy.
Yeah, it seemed
'cause
like
of
the
her.
music box was going off, the REM pod was going off, like EMF meters
in,
going off.
in real
Everything's going off.
reality.
She finishes hammering this dagger into the ground, and everything stops.
Well, it's not everything stops. They just stopped doing the cuts. They stopped
no,
doing all the cuts.
they did another cut, and everything was stopped. Nothing was making noise.
So okay,
They did that. They did it. I saw it.
I want to know if that
gonna
was
argue.
even happening at the time.
I highly doubt it.
I highly doubt it as well. It was a cool effect though.
It was.
It was a really cool.
It gets you going.
It got you going
Got you going. I saw.
I was like, is that even happening right
you
now?
were tearing up. You're like, oh, this is so sweet.
Well, is this even
This
happening?
lady is helping these people.
This is like what we're supposed to do. But
They're getting rid of that demon.
it was a really cool documentary.
They banished him back to hell where he came from.
Yeah.
Down below.
Well, that's what they say, but there's way more than just this guy. There's way more than just that spirit. There's so many spirits in this place. You see, like, go back and watch that one I told you about. There's so many cuts to these people, these spirits creeping around trees, creeping around corners of the walls, and it's pretty cool.
Well, they say that like over the years, a lot of people have tried to remove the activity or like clear the house, if you will, and it would settle down for a little bit, and then it comes back with a vengeance, is their words. So we'll see. This all happened, I believe, last year in November.
Yeah,
is what they said.
Yeah, that's what it looks
somewhere
like.
in there, because they like at the end of it, it's like 6 months later, and he's going into talking to Terry and Dwayne, and they're like, it's not the end, it's just the beginning.
Dun, dun,
and I'm
dun.
like, I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, I think they mean a new beginning for them.
Well, he didn't say new beginning.
For them, it's like a new life.
But he
because-
literally said, I don't think this is the end of it, it's just the beginning. And I'm like, so it's the sequel? Like, more is going to happen? I understand what he was probably trying to say, but it's just the way he worded it. I'm like, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
Because he's literally said, it's not the end, it's the beginning. Like, not,
I mean,
not
I
a
got
new,
it. I got
I
it. when he
didn't
said
get it. No,
I was
I'm
like,
stupid.
Aw,
I don't know.
Oh, Dwayne.
That's what you did too when she was hammering the iron dagger into the ground, banishing the demon back to hell.
I was like, oh, demon.
Yeah,
Aw.
this is poor demon.
Aw.
Just leave him alone. He's having
Just wants to play.
fun. He wants a friend. Don't invite demons into your house.
There's actually another one of the Haunting of Dice Road Part 2.
What? I saw that.
But it's not at the house. No, it's just down the street. There's other shit in that town that's haunted.
Town of the Dead.
So I guess it's down the street from that house.
Okay.
But I didn't watch it yet. I started it and I was like, oh, this isn't actually the same house. So, but there's a part 2.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, oh, they did 2 of them, but
Nope.
I
It
see
just sounds
that.
like
It's just
they
one.
were. Well, while he was doing that, he probably got told about. Well, there's some other haunted shit right here. You should probably talk.
Probably because those first 2 documentaries came out a year apart from each other. So one was 2016, one was 2017.
So he has a series on Discovery Plus that I started. I just realized it was on.
Okay,
I'll show you what that is. I can't remember off the top of my
I'll
head.
find it. We'll
Yeah.
find it. We don't know what it's called, but there's one.
It's something like
Something with Steve Shippey. Just look his name up and we'll find it.
yeah.
But if you want to watch the documentaries that we're talking about, if you have Discovery Plus, it's simply called
The Hell House of
of
Michigan.
The Michigan Hell House.
Michigan Hell House.
It's called the Michigan Hell House. The 2016 one is called A Haunting on Dice Road, The Hell House. And like you said, there is the sequel. It's A Haunting on Dice Road 2, Town of the Dead. We haven't watched that one yet, so we don't know anything about that one.
It's about the
But
Town of the Dead.
It's about the Town of the Dead. But yeah, that's the Michigan Hell House.
Yeah, that was a juicy one.
And I mean, that's a lot of stuff to happen in
A year.
a year. And I actually, like, you know, my opinion on the Amityville house. I think that DeFeo's story is legit, And I think Ronnie DeFeo was actually like possessed. I think George Lutz was full of shit and was just trying to capitalize on it and make money. And they did. With The Conjuring, with the Perron family, they lived in that house for 10 years.
Yeah.
And Andrea told us straight up, like when I asked her why you were there for 10 years, it's because they put all of the family's money into that house and they couldn't afford to sell it and move. They would have lost their asses.
But they also had a lot of love in the house too.
Right.
And so they
But
made
again, this is with how
House
much
of Love, House of Light.
Yes, with how much shit that happened with the Perron family, it was over 10-year period.
Right.
With this family, it was less than a year.
And there was over 35 police calls.
Like, just think of like how bad The Conjuring was over 10 years. This is all of that 10 years put into 1 year.
Right. They had, like, this was tormenting them, like, every night, this knocking. And it was they said it was just, like, some of them would be soft and then some would just be crazy loud. Like, there was somebody out there beating on the house or something.
And then smothering people with pillows.
I believe they had something on the house. There was dents on the vinyl. I can't remember why. Shit, I forgot what was going on. But
the evilness.
But they had the same siding on there from the 50s. Same siding was still on.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, shit's
crazy.
But yeah. Anything else?
Not that I can think of. Nope.
All right, guys.
So before we go, make sure you're following us on the social medias. We actually post stuff now, thanks to DVO, who is still dead, but
not on social media.
His ghost is still doing social media. He might be joining us next week for our 100th episode
at Fort Douglas
Military Museum. There are still a few tickets left. We're getting pretty close to being sold out. Tickets are $30, and the time of this airing, you've only got like 6 days left.
Hurry up
and get your tickets. Like I said, follow us on social media, evp.pod at Instagram and Facebook. If you have a story you'd like to share with us, send them. Yeah, send our stories to evp.pod@gmail.com or hit us up on Messenger on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. Yeah, and then if you're looking for ghost hunting gear, if you want to come join us on the Fort Douglas investigation, check out our affiliate link to Ghost Stop. That's where we buy all of our gear.
Well, all right, everybody. Ghosty don't play that.
Peace out, butterflies.
This is the EVP Podcast.